Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined as always by my co-host, Brian. In just a sec, guys, we are back here. Week number 16 here in the NFL 2024 season. And you know what? Usually I say, man, we got a lot of great games to talk about. Kind of last week, I hyped it up a little bit and was like, man, there's a lot of marquee matchups. What duds across the NFL really only ended up being one solid game in the Bills and Lions, and even then, the Lions kind of were chasing the Bills the entire game. All the other kind of marquee matchups and the other matchups, which were some bad teams playing each other, were kind of as advertised to not at all advertised in let's say Eagles Steelers. Ended up being real snooze fest. So we're going to only be talking about kind of Bills Lions tonight, a couple other stories, and then we'll get into picks. It's also very late here as we're recording this on a Thursday night while the Chargers Broncos game is going on. So, Bri, before we get into it, with all that being said, I welcome you in. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing good, and good to be on for another show here. Unfortunate that last week did not live up to the hype. I mean, you looked at that slate of games, and it looked like there were some juicy matchups there. And as it turned out, like you said, we only really got one really good one. I mean, after all, we did get a Jets win. I mean,
Hey,
yeah, right. Stop the presses. I mean, two, 3-10 teams going at it. You
yeah,
know what? They
it was pretty
made
good.
some plays. Devontae Adams had a heck of a game. I mean,
He
he
did.
just had a tremendous
Second half,
performance.
him and Rodgers went off. That first half, they were really bad.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, now a lot of talk that Rodgers is actually looking better here the
You
last
knew that
couple
was gonna
weeks.
happen.
Maybe they're best served to bring him back next year and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, we know that's going to be a big question and topic of discussion.
Oh yeah.
I'm not like gung ho that he has to be back after a couple good games, one against the lousy Jags defense. I mean, we cannot get too excited about anything that we
No,
see
not
the
not
rest of
all. And
the
you
season.
played Mac Jones, so
Mac
that
Jones.
kind of factors into it as well.
Yeah. And I mean, silly me thought the Giants could actually cover that big point spread.
Early on,
No,
it
the
looked like they
Ravens
could, and then that went right out the
early
window.
on. Right, and Lamar just lit it up
Yeah,
as you kind of forecasted. You were expecting he had, what, five touchdowns?
five
I mean, a
touchdowns. Yeah,
brilliant performance by
yeah.
him. A Giants team that doesn't look like it has any interest in winning these games.
No, they look like
So,
they quit. They look like they straight up quit.
yeah.
Yeah, and as that was going on, I looked at big 3rd and 10 in the shadow of his own goal line. Justin Herbert had a huge run, and now we're seeing another gigantic run here. He's still on his feet, and he fumbles the ball. Oh, is he down or is that a fumble? Oh, Gus Edwards might have dropped that. They're saying he's down. What a huge run there. Wow. Okay. That was some live commentating going on there. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the Chargers Broncos game, as I said, is going on, yeah. Herbert with a gigantic first down run on 3rd and 10 with just under 4 minutes to play, and then a big run coming here from Edwards. Oh, he's down. Knees down. Yeah. All right. So that's going to be a huge run. Takes it down to the Denver 30. And the clock is running here just under 3 minutes. And that might end up sealing it with the Chargers up three. Huge two plays by these guys. Wow. That was something. Anyway, we'll get back to what we were talking about. Yes, good for the Jets. I do want to talk about before we jump in a little bit, just because we do the local stuff. And with the Jets, a big report came out today. Don't know if you guys had a chance to read it, but not great news in terms of what the environment might be like there, which is kind of what we expected. And for those of the uninitiated, basically an article came out today that said how Woody Johnson runs the team. His teenage son has significant influence in kind of the decisions that were made. Some rumblings that former GM Joe Douglas, who got fired earlier this season, he was basically complaining that he had to report to a teenager for a lot of the moves he made. And then kind of the big kind of piece de resistance of the story was the Jets inquired and were going to make a trade at some point in the season before the Devontae Adams move for Jerry Jeudy from the Cleveland Browns. And basically Woody Johnson's son said, oh, his Madden rating is very low. And that was kind of the determining factor, or at least had heavy influence on them not making that trade and pulling the trigger. Just seems like a lot of dysfunction. There was a whole bunch of other stuff dating back to Mike White that was in there. Whole bunch of stuff there as the Chargers running in for a touchdown with Haskins. Whole bunch of stuff in that article. Don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but for anyone also that hadn't had a chance today, just wanted to get your quick 2 cents on kind of what we imagine was the Jets' dysfunction, but seeing it in written form, a lot of reputable reporters kind of chiming in on this. Kind of what's your quick reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I did see the article come up on my feed. I am subscribed to The Athletic. I did not take the time out of my day to read through it. I just can't do a reading about the
That's
Jets
fair.
right now. I feel like the all the evidence we need is watching the games each week to know how dysfunctional they are.
Yeah.
So I mean that's my reading each week. I don't need to add to it, with some outsiders weighing in. But I mean, the part about the Madden situation with the trade for Jerry Jeudy, that to me seems a little far fetched. Like as dysfunctional as they may be, and believe me, I know they are. I've said it. I didn't was not a believer in this team coming into the season, but that seems a little far
It
out
would be
there that you're
crazy.
not going to make a trade. Yeah. And I mean the thing about Jerry Jeudy is it's not like he was having a good start to his career
Yeah.
in Denver.
Yeah.
And even after the trade to Cleveland, like it wasn't until the second half of this season that he really came on. So it's not like it was a can't miss trade that anybody was going to make. I
No,
mean,
not at
good
all.
for him. He's kind of found his ways, put up some good games here, none
Huge
bigger than
games.
against his former team in
Yeah.
Denver a couple weeks ago. But I'm not going to get on the Jets too much for that particular one. But as far as the dysfunction, it's pretty clear what's going on around the organization, that it's not leading to formula. And to me, it's just going to come down to who are the next hires. There's a lot of
Yeah.
talk about Mike Vrabel as the next head coach.
Yeah.
I
I don't know
would
about
be
that.
like, and like, I mean, like, I think he's a solid coach. Do I think he's really going to be a difference maker with the Jets? Probably not. Then you got the general manager, where we've heard Thomas Dimitrov has been interviewed. I wouldn't hate that. I mean, he built some good teams in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Louis Riddick is in the mix. He's been on TV with ESPN. Has been in the mix for different jobs, but they got to get these hires right. That's the bottom line. We know
Yeah.
ownership is an issue, but at
I,
some point,
I think that's
you
the
feel like the broken clock. Yeah,
I think that's the problem, Brian. I think that the ownership is absolutely horrific. It's one of the worst owners in sports, and I think as long as Woody Johnson is there, and if the team is really being run in this way, and his teenage son, has this kind of influence, and he kind of defers to him in some cases, it's ridiculous. It's a clown organization if any of this is true. And what respectable GM or coach, Mike Vrabel, don't want to deal with this crap? He ain't coming there. I just think these problems unfortunately feel unfixable for the Jets. I don't think when you have this poor of an owner, I think it's, and I don't mean money wise, I just mean in the way you run your organization. I just don't think it's possible to pull them out of the doldrums and make them a viable championship contender. I don't think they're going to get the best candidates this offseason, especially with that report coming out. Whether it's true or not does not matter. It's the perception that it creates to prospective head coaches and GMs. And if they believe this, even an ounce, if they have their context and some of these things could be true or sort of true, they're not coming here. No one's going to do that. And you're going to get some first time coordinator or a Rex Ryan who hasn't coached in 10 years. And that's going to be your options here. I just think all around, the Jets are, unfortunately for you, for Dylan, for all these people out there, they're just one of the worst sports franchises we have seen in the last 25, 30 years. And I think as long as Woody is there, they will continue to be horrifically awful. I have zero faith in anything of them going forward.
yeah. I mean, it really comes down to that. You just have to hope eventually it comes to its senses and looks to sell the team. We've
Yeah.
seen some
Doubtful. He's making money.
positives. You look at Washington. Right, Washington has new ownership. They're on the rise now with their emerging young talented quarterback. We go to a different sport. We know how you and I suffered with the Mets year after
Wilpons.
year
Yep.
with bad ownership.
Yep.
And finally, we're seeing some light now that, you got a rich owner who knows what he's doing, and we don't have to deal with the Wilpons anymore.
Oh, God.
So
And Bernie Madoff.
that's just gotta hope something like that. There's a change at the top, and you start from there. But until
Yeah.
that, like you said, you can't really have much hope.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of hope for that. The valuation of the Jets since he's taken over has significantly increased. He's making money every year, and that's what he cares about. That's why he bought it. It was a business and a way to make money. It's a capital investment. I don't see him selling it anytime soon, barring some scandal comes out and he's forced out. Kind of like Daniel Snyder was in Washington. I just don't see it, and I think the Jets they're going to make a mistake with Aaron Rodgers. I think him playing well when the season doesn't matter, that's going to come up. They're going to bring him back probably next year. Would not be surprised if your head coach is Rex Ryan and your GM is Mark Tenenbaum. Like, I honestly wouldn't. It just feels like it's the greatest hits, quote unquote, that we're playing there. And I think it's a laughable joke clown of a franchise. I just do. That's why we didn't pick them to make the playoffs. So that's why.
Yeah, exactly. But if they make the choice to bring back Rex Ryan,
Yeah.
I mean, then it's just the full blown clown show because you
I'm sure
cannot
we'll have a lot
possibly.
to say when and if that happens. We'll have a lot to say about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really.
It's tough. It's tough. I'm sorry for beating down the Jets there, Bri. I really am. But I wanted to get your 2 cents on that. Some other news, Bri, around the league that's been going around. The big position quarterback news of the week. Kirk Cousins. It's kind of been some rumblings going on. We've talked about it a little bit on the show. They beat the Raiders 15-9 on Monday night. They didn't look good. Kirk did not look good. He's had about a 6-game stretch now, I think, of like 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions after, remember, beat the Bucks twice, had a 500-yard game. He had some good games this season. I don't know what has happened. I don't know if he kind of hit the post Achilles wall. I have no idea. It has not worked out. They switched to Michael Penix. I'm not a huge fan of the decision, to be honest, just because I'm of the mind you're 7-7, you're in the playoff hunt, you're only a game behind the Bucks. Ride it out and make the Kirk Cousins change next year you don't make the playoffs. But right now, switching a rookie who hasn't pretty much played all season except in mop-up duty in the middle of a playoff race with 3 games to go, I don't think it's a good decision. I don't think a lot of good decisions have happened in Atlanta in the last several years of kind of the choices they've made, the usage of star players, all of that's happened. What's your reaction on the Kirk Cousins benching in Atlanta?
Yeah, it was definitely a bit surprising. I mean, this was a team that I had pretty high hopes for, as I think a lot of people did. I mean, you looked at division, I think it was like conventional wisdom. The Bucks aren't going to repeat what they did last year,
Yep.
and so Atlanta should easily claim this division. And it just hasn't been that way. That the offense hasn't clicked for the most part outside of a couple games, really. But the surprise comes because you're taking a guy who is so established
Yep.
at the position
Yep.
and going to a rookie with no experience whatsoever in a situation where you're still alive for a postseason spot. And
Yep.
so you really have to think highly of the rookie, which I'm sure they do. They picked him in the first round.
It's a
That
lot
he
to
was a
ask,
star in
Brian.
college.
It's a lot to ask.
It is. I agree, but I think it really comes down to like Cousins' play over the last 5 weeks, whatever it might be. It just has been that poor. I
Yep.
mean,
It's been awful.
not only the interceptions, but some of the interceptions are being returned for
Yep.
touchdowns, and I just think they're looking at far too many negative plays, thinking maybe they make a change, they catch lightning in a bottle for a couple games here, and that's kind of the way of thinking. But I'm kind of in your camp where I probably would still ride it out with Cousins because I feel like he has enough experience. Yes, he's going through very dry period right now, but you feel like he might be able to figure it out. He's a veteran. He knows his way around, but I think they just kind of reached a point of no return and want to see what they have in the youngster and like I said, see if they can catch a little spark.
Yeah, if you watch the reporters ask him questions, it's kind of Kirk Cousins is, he's kind of a workman's guy. He follows the rules. He gives off that persona. He's a good guy. He's a family man. You saw in the hard knocks or the quarterback thing. He was he's a man of faith. He believes in all of that stuff. He was kind of as spicy as you could ever get him when they were asking him these questions, and he was like, well, it's not like I forgot how to play quarterback. And so having that response, you could tell how he's ticked off. Does this split guys in the locker room? How are they feeling about that? You got 3 games to go. Like, you paid him $100 million guaranteed. Essentially, right now, you're looking at what, $90 million for 14 games? Like, he's his first season off post Achilles. And you're still, it's not like, oh my God, you're 3-11. The season is awful. Let's see what we have with Penix. Clearly, Cousins isn't coming back. You have the tiebreaker over the Bucs. They lose one, you win one. You win, you're in. You have the division lead again. I just really don't understand the logic behind it. I mean, I like Raheem Morris. He won a Super Bowl with us in Los Angeles. I questioned the hire even when it happened. I was like, we're turning away Bill Belichick, but we're giving this guy a head coaching spot when he's already done it already, and it didn't go well last time either. So, like, I questioned some of that. He's had some weird kind of spicy post-game conferences, kind of responses in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Things just seem like they're falling apart in Atlanta, and Atlanta just feels like that classic team that you and I also, and everybody else, we get sucked in every time. They have all these shiny toys in the garage, all these, shiny cars. They should be so much better than they are, and then they're just not. And they're just a middling team around 500 who doesn't win the division, who doesn't get to the playoffs, and it's just disappointing. And I feel like we're getting that once again. And the stuff with Cousins, too, that's, is alarming is, like, the turnovers, he hasn't played well, pick sixes, sure, but he's not throwing the ball down the field with accuracy. It just doesn't seem like he can get enough, kind of oomph, like some velocity to the ball. And that's what I think is most concerning about how he is playing, and maybe that's what they are looking at, that, hell, Bry, he just might be washed. I mean, that just might be the case.
I think we're learning that quarterbacks in their mid 30s, or in Rodgers' case 40 going on 41,
Yeah.
it's a lot to deal with, having a torn Achilles and making your way back. Even if you're 25 coming back from that, it's going to be a big adjustment. But, when they're that advanced in age, it just makes it all the more
Yeah.
difficult. And I mean, Cousins has been a good quarterback. It's never like he's been elite. He was probably playing his best right before the injury last year in Minnesota, but a lot of years he was probably like an average to slightly above, I would say, in Washington, and other years in Minnesota. So it's not like you were expecting Rodgers level production in his prime, with Atlanta, but you kind of thought with the supporting cast he had around him that it would add up to success, especially too, like on defense. Remember, they made all those moves right before the start of the season. It looked like a team, right? It looked like a team on paper that was ready to compete, and they're another disappointment. I mean, for me, the biggest disappointments in the league, I don't really put the Jets there because I wasn't as high on them. The 49ers have to be number one.
Yeah.
I would put the Niners number one. I'd probably put the Falcons like right behind them.
Yeah, I think I would put Niners, Falcons, and I would put the Jets in there, just because the overall media, there was so much expectations. Even though you and I weren't believing in the hype, there was many people that legitimately picked this team to go to the Super Bowl. Like, they picked Rodgers to be an MVP candidate. Like, there was a lot of that talk that goes around, and a lot of those people, they act like, oh, that didn't happen. I didn't really, they try all these mental gymnastics to be like, I didn't say that. It's like, no, you did. It's on tape. Those have probably been my 3 most disappointing teams, I would say, in the league, in terms of what we expected, what most people expected, and just feels like a weird move. I hope for Penix's sake he plays well. I want to see good quarterback play. I want to see these rookies kind of shine. I think it's a very difficult situation he's thrust into right now.
Well, let me just say, I mean, this week they're playing the Giants. Like, they should just win by default. They could win like 10-0, and that would be enough.
And the Chargers, I will also say live, the Broncos kicked the field goal. It was 34-27. The Broncos obviously attempted an onside kick. It was unsuccessful. Only 3 successful onsides in the entirety of the league this season. And the Chargers are going to kneel this one out, and they're going to win this one 34-27. Massive win for the Chargers and their playoff hopes. pretty much all but secures it. If they lost, they were actually in danger through some weird things of the Bengals kind of catching them. It was going to get a little dicey. They will probably secure it with that win. Huge win in Los Angeles. And yeah, congrats to them. And the Broncos, with a very poor second half, only scored 3 points. Got thoroughly boat raced in the second half. And yeah, there's some.
Yeah, they were up 21-10. They were up 21 to
Yeah,
10 in this game.
they're up
It had
21-10, and
some weird twists.
yeah, and the 3 points they just scored with a little over a minute left with a Will Lutz field goal was the only points of the entire second half. Yeah, kind of collapsed down the stretch, and I'll be watching Sean Payton's press conference tomorrow. So sorry for that little tangent, as we were doing this live here, but yeah, just wanted to add that into the podcast.
You'll also see when you watch the highlights, there was a bizarre sequence at the end of the first half that led to the Chargers being able to have a free kick, which is something that you almost never see. It was something about like a penalty called with like still a second left. I had it on in the background, so I missed like exactly the explanation. I just saw they lined up for a free kick. It was like a 57-yarder from Cameron Dicker, and he made it. But you'd never see a free kick in the NFL. I mean, I feel like it's once every
It's a
in a blue moon.
1940s football right there. You don't really see that here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here, I just have it on here. Chargers path to the playoffs. They got to win 2 of the last 3 games. They're going to do one of those right here tonight. They would miss the playoffs if they lost all 3 games, and Cincinnati, Indy, and Miami won all 3 of their games. So they avoid that. They will clinch a playoff spot if they get one more win next week or the week after, but their percentage chances are extremely high now with this win. And with this win, probably secures what the AFC playoff picture will look like. Denver, even in this losing effort, will probably be in. The Chargers, the Chiefs, looks like Ravens, Steelers, Texans, and the Bills. That will probably be the 7 teams in the AFC.
So out of Cincy, Indy, Miami, give me the one you think has the best chance. I mean, I know we don't expect any of the 3 to make it, but out of those
Cincy.
3, if you picked one,
Yeah,
who would it be?
Cincy is the best quarterback.
You know
Cincy has the
Cincy.
best weapons. They have the ability to score 40 at any point. They do. Miami's dead. The Tua contract, I said it at the time, I thought it was really risky and stupid. I think we both did, honestly. You just know what Tua is at this point. He got hurt again, had a massive head injury again, and he's just not that guy. He's a solid quarterback. He's just not that guy, and Miami's just soft. And Indy, I think it's fair to say at this point, I think we'll definitely say it when we come off-season talks, think Anthony Richardson's probably a bust. I think 4th overall, they gave it a shot. Guy had ridiculous athleticism. It's probably a bust. I will say, just before you answer that there, Broncos path to the playoffs. They have it up here on Amazon. Win or tie one of the remaining 3 games. They obviously lost tonight. They missed the playoffs, losing all 3 games and wins by those other teams that were mentioned. So pretty much they're fine. They win one of the next 2 games or even tie one of the next 2 games. They clinch a playoff spot as Herbert throws the ball up on 4th and 32, and that will run out the clock, and it is official in the record books. 34-27 Chargers on Thursday Night Football, and I'm 0-1 in my picks already to start off the week. So that stinks, but
That's a big win for the Chargers because it's an organization year after year. These are the kind of games that they come up short
every
in,
time.
and right, this shows that like Harbaugh has his stamp on that team. Like if they lost this one, it kind of would have felt like here we go again with the same old Chargers.
Yeah.
This was an important win, especially coming in come from behind fashion as it did.
Yeah, they've been screwing me in picks. I have no read on this team. I picked them last week against the Bucks, and I shouldn't have. They got blown out in that game last week. I picked them against them this week, and they come back and win. It was 24-10 at one point in this game in the middle of the third quarter. And, the Broncos do absolutely nothing for pretty much the entire rest of the way. So that was that. Brian, the other little news thing I wanted to get to before we talk about the Bills-Lions, and then we'll do our picks. I brought it up to you before the stream started, before we were doing this recording. Red Zone, if you were Verizon, it seems like only a Verizon user, which a lot of people are, you and I both are, You watch it this weekend, ads in the 4 o'clock window for the first time ever. And noticeably, Scott Hansen did not say commercial free football in that second half. I went to Twitter. I thought there was something wrong with me. And a whole bunch of people just talking about, nope, happened to them too. There was totally ads. It was one of those inbox ads where they had the game but no audio in the game. And then the ad had its audio on the side. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, insanely, disgustingly greedy on the part of the NFL, Verizon, whoever, whatever multitude of people are behind that. I think it's here to stay in some regard, especially starting next season. You advertise your product. Red Zone has grown the game of football so much. You advertise your product as 7 hours of commercial-free football. We've seen in the last couple of years, Red Zone domestically is not even allowed to keep one game on in the standalone afternoon. They have to cut away and you have to switch to your local station. So they changed that from what they originally were, with some kind of TV contracts deals that went on. And then now you're having ads start permeate. We already have DraftKings, all these things are posted, all over Red Zone. Scott will even say, Scott Hansen, sponsored by, whatever it is. So you're already getting your ad revenue there. To add ads in to, points of the game, especially cutting off the game audio, making the game video smaller, I think it's just disgraceful. I just want to absolutely just talk about that. I am not in agreement with it. I think it's ridiculous, and I am very interested. Will this hurt the product? Will it be kind of status quo? What happens? What happens with this feedback that they heard this week? I was really just annoyed by them doing that. I thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, Red Zone has kind of become king, for NFL viewers. It's like, especially
Yeah.
if you don't want to watch the games in the 1 o'clock window, like, which for us locally, people who aren't Jet and Giant fans, and even if they are, they're probably watching Red Zone at this point because they don't want to watch that garbage. And Red Zone has been a great product. I mean, Scott Hansen does a terrific job. It seems like he's universally beloved. Their product is great. Admittedly, when I saw this ad thing pop up, I was mistaken because I actually thought it appeared like on the game broadcast. Like, how they sometimes
Yeah.
cut away and they pop up
Mm.
with the ad. I didn't realize that it was actually Red Zone's production itself that was
Yep.
bringing up the ad. And that's what, like, I was expecting is normally, when they go to a game, sometimes you'll see just like the flash of a commercial when it goes to break, and right away Scott will be like, okay, that's gone to commercial break. We flip to the next game.
Yep.
And when it didn't do that, that's when kind of like the alarm bells went off, like, oh, wait a minute, we're not supposed to see that. So
Yep.
then right away you had people pointing it out. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of hope it's something that they fix because, like you said, it's always the way they advertise themselves, commercial free football.
That's why we
And,
watch. We
for
literally watch because we could continuous football or stats, and we cut back to the studio with Scott. There is not a single moment we want to be dealing with ads. Otherwise, we might as well watch cable TV. They keep doing that, and it gets worse and worse. Let's say hypothetically, I'll cut my cable package and not include them anymore. I'll just watch. This is where people you see on the internet talk about people gravitate more and more to illegal streams, and they start pirating things because we can only pay for so much in the world. No one wants to be dealing with ads. You advertise a product for the entire existence of your inception of being there, of having no commercials. Do not make this a permanent change. I'm telling you right now, you want to hurt your product, this will be a great way to do it.
And you can tell Scott always has like the viewer's top of mind. Like in the case where they miss a touchdown because like the broadcast came back late or something, he'll like go on a rant about it and really
Yeah.
voice his frustration. So you could tell that like he wants it to be the best possible viewing experience for everybody watching, and so hopefully he could be behind a change back to how it
Yeah.
should be and how it always has been.
I don't know if they're still up now, but he did voice his opinion a little bit to how much he could on Twitter. Did not seem like he was on board or happy with it happening. But at the end of the day, he's the host.
Yeah.
He's not an executive. He's not the guys making these decisions. I'm just worried about that. So that was a quick note that I thought was worth addressing of how popular it is, how we both use it. Do not want to see that going forward. I don't care how small our podcast is. If anyone even sees this, if there's some vote, if there's something to make your voice heard, get rid of commercials on Red Zone. I don't want to see that anymore. Brian, let's cut to the only game we're going to talk about from Week 15 because it was kind of the only game worth talking about. We're talking about the Bills again because they were in, for the second consecutive week, the highest scoring game in the league. I think this broke the Rams record as now the highest scoring game of the year combined between two teams. The Bills take down the Lions 48-42 of two teams coming in here 10-3 for the Bills, 12-1 for the Lions, and what a win for Buffalo on the road coming in there. Josh Allen cementing again, making another huge statement of his MVP case. 23 for 34, 362, 2 touchdowns. He also had 68 yards on the ground and another 2 rushing touchdowns. He was incredible. The team was incredible offensively. Defensively, a lot to be desired from both of these teams. Detroit kind of has more of an excuse because they are so injured. Buffalo just maybe not talented enough against those elite level offenses that Detroit was. And on the other side, the Lions, at least offensively, deserve a lot of respect here. Jared Goff, 38 for 59, 494 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no turnovers. I thought he was absolutely excellent. Laporta and St. Brown both went over 100 yards. St. Brown almost had 200 yards. But the story of this game for you, Bri, what is it? Is it kind of Detroit and kind of them becoming the Walking Dead at this point? They also lose David Montgomery in this game. He's going to miss the rest of the regular season with a knee injury. There's some talk of report right before we started recording this that he could come back in the playoffs, but definitely for the regular season, he is out. They also lost 3 more defensive players in this game. It is insane the amount of injured players that Detroit has. So is it more about them and them becoming the Walking Dead, or is this a cemented case for Buffalo bouncing back after the loss of the Rams where you're like, wow, is Buffalo the best team in the league? Because we have seen them give the only loss to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo is obviously a terrific team, and Josh Allen is just playing out of his mind, seemingly coinciding with his recent engagement, which a lot of people have pointed out. Since that news broke, he's had his 2, biggest games. One, of course, in the losing effort, but I mean, he's just been outstanding. But for the Lions, I mean, I think going into this game, I and many people still believed this was the team in the league, probably the favorite still to win the whole thing. And as the game ends, suddenly you have a lot of questions about the Lions, and I just wonder now if they're just too beat up on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we know they lost Aiden Hutchinson. They survived that for a few weeks, but there's only so many hits you can take. And I mean, the fact that they're missing key player after key player on defense, I just don't know from the playoffs when you're facing big time offenses that they're going to be good enough. I know they're going to score, but that defense just isn't going to be able to stop anybody. So I have big concerns now for the Lions, and I'm not underestimating the impact of losing David Montgomery because I feel like that rushing attack is predicated on having both of them, the Sonic and Knuckles as they become known with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I know for Gibbs, it'll be a good opportunity for him to have like the full showcase without Montgomery, but they're just so effective as a 1-2 punch that it really takes an element away from that offense not having the puncher Montgomery in there. So, I mean, it's still obviously a very dangerous team. We know what they can do offensively, but I just feel like at this point they're too beat up that I think they can beat the likes of a Philly come the playoffs and even some other teams they could be vulnerable against. It's a shame because all season long we've been hyping this team up, and rightfully so, but as it's gone deeper, you just wonder if they've sustained too many blows here that they're going to be able to keep up, and I would have questions right now.
Yeah, from my count, it looks like 18 players currently on the IR for the Lions, which and a lot of them are defensively, and you do see a lot of kind of important names, right? The guard in Graham Glass now, Brian, Branch he's not on IR, but is limited. David Montgomery is now expected to be on IR, but he's definitely not going to play the rest of the regular season. You got Anzalone, Hutchinson, Carlton Davis, Khalif Raymond. Like, even their kicker, Michael Badgley, is on the IR. Like, it has just been Marcus Davenport, injury after injury all season long. I think at this point, it is I agree with you in what you say, Bri. I think it is very clear. A month ago, you and I, many people, it wasn't like, some kind of crazy opinion. We were talking about this team they're the best team in football. They feel it. It's them, the Chiefs, the Bills, right, and the Eagles, right? It was those four, but it just felt like the Lions, especially in the NFC, were just a notch above. I don't think they can sustain this. I think they have a good shot. I think it's on the board of losing the division to the Vikings. I think there is a good shot of that. They drop to the 5th seed in the wild card. And then, Bri, they end up playing a team like the Bucks or the Rams or the Seahawks. Anything can happen playing a home game in those stadiums against what could be a red-hot team while you're coming in as the Walking Dead. I think they're in a lot of trouble, and it sucks that, it's the best season Detroit football has ever had. There's so many positives from this story, and it's just been kind of stripped away from them due to injury. It's sad to watch, but I can no longer put them in that upper echelon. They've definitely dropped a tier for me.
And you mentioned like how a dangerous matchup would be the Bucks. You remember week 2 this season, that was their only loss until the last game. So the Bucks can be dangerous. They met him in the playoffs last year, played a competitive game.
Yep.
Of course, you saw your team go and play a very competitive game in Detroit in the wild card round last year, and the Rams offense, if it's clicking, they can be dangerous. I mean, last week when you were on your show, it was kind of a dull game, but they won it with a bunch of field goals, and it was good enough.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, you get the Rams, for some reason, just because they don't have a good home field advantage, really. You get them on the road, they typically respond, and they're in Detroit in a dome. So you're going to get to see that offense. We've seen it last year in the playoff game. We saw it in the opening Sunday night game this year that went to overtime. 2 close games. They lost in January by 1 point. We know what they can do. The Bucks are dangerous, Bri. They've beaten the Lions and the Eagles this season. So they are a very, very dangerous team despite their injuries that have happened as well. Baker's playing out of his mind. Definitely a dark horse MVP candidate. This game was incredible. I want to switch it over, though, before we get out of here, to the Bills side. I mean, what Josh Allen's doing right now is just crazy. I mean, I think you are extremely biased, and I mean the media or anybody out there. If at this moment, we could all agree Patrick Mahomes, he's the best player, right? He's the championship guy. We're not taking anything away from him. But this season, not even close. I mean, Josh Allen by a mile is clearly the best quarterback in football. We have seen it every single week pretty much outside of the Texans game, which is such a weird thing, right? He's had all these amazing games, and the Texans games was one of the worst completion percentages in NFL history. That was also this season. So it's just sometimes the NFL where teams just really have your number. He has been incredible lately. He's been amazing all season. The dual threat of the Superman cape that he's been able to put on his back. And I said some of this stuff earlier in the season. I said, sometimes, that Diggs move can be an addition by subtraction, right? Like, you don't feel like you got to feed the guy. You could kind of really show off your full self. I feel like he is able to do that to the fullest extent. Now, yes, am I concerned about their defense? 100%. They've given up 86 points in the last 2 weeks. That is horrific. And do I think you could win a championship playing that bad? Absolutely not. But if they could shore that up under Sean McDermott and Josh keeps playing like this, it's hard to see anyone outside of Kansas City beating them, and they already beat them. So that's on the board to be the most dangerous team in the AFC. Do you see it that way, or is it by far and away Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? They are number one.
Oh no, no, it's the former. I mean, I'm a little more down on the Chiefs. I definitely have questions about them. I mean, week after week, they survive each time. I mean, last week they won somewhat convincingly against the Browns. Of course, now you have the injury with Mahomes to deal with, although it looks like he's going to be good to go.
Yep.
As far as the Bills, I give them the edge right now in the AFC, and I feel like with Allen, it's what's taken him to a new level is his running. I mean, we know it's always been a part of his game, but I feel like this year, he's running
Another
for like
level.
close to 100 yards some games.
Yeah.
And if you get that with what James Cook can do, and I know he's been kind of hit or miss, but this offense is very dynamic. It has a lot of ways to beat you. It's starting to get healthier, right? Like they got one of their weapons back, Dalton Kincaid. I feel like he's been a little bit of a disappointment this year.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a big key in the playoffs. But then you get some guys who kind of come out of the blue, like Ty
Yeah,
Johnson,
he's been
who
great the
goes for
last couple
100
weeks.
yards.
Yeah.
And he was like the go-to guy early in that game against Detroit. Allen's just airing it out downfield to him, and he's
Yeah.
making plays. So they got a lot of weapons. Shakir has been very reliable all season long. So they're a handful. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
the defense leaves a lot to be desired, but with them, it's about their offense, and it hasn't shown many holes through the season.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah, that trio they really have right there now of Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson has been really good for them. Like they've really been playing good in the backfield, and I like the weapons they have here. They got to shore some stuff up, but the only entertaining game of Week 15, really, honestly, at least game that had stakes coming into it and lived up somewhat to the billing, even though the Lions were kind of chasing them the whole game. It's a pleasure to watch these two offenses play. I take nothing away from Detroit in that regard. They play great on the offensive side of the ball. It's just I don't know if they can sustain given all of these injuries happening. Brian, let's do
Yeah.
our picks here and get out of here as it's getting late. Some Saturday games this week as we get to the holidays. So you're going to see between this week and next week a lot of weird scheduling going on. So make sure if you're in a picks league, you're in fantasy playoffs, stay tuned, pay attention, keep up with the news because games are not going to be in their typical slots. With that being said, Brian, we start off on Saturday with the Chiefs. They host the Texans at 1 o'clock in Arrowhead. Mahomes, should he play? Probably not. Did it look like on Sunday he was going to play? Not really. He's been a full participant almost all week long. You have to admire the guy's grit, what he does. Even if he's 60% in this game, who you got? Chiefs or Texans?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting that he was going to miss at least one game, especially like, the way he was talking after the last game, pretty non-committal about the next one. He said, like, I'm not sure right now. And normally when you get that kind of answer, it's kind of definitive that
Yep.
it's the direction one way, and that way is not being on the field. But as we've said many times, he's a bit of a different breed, and so he'll be out there. And if he's out there, you got to give the edge to the Chiefs. They're at home. Will it be close? Probably,
Yep.
because all their games are
Yep.
close, especially at home lately. So the Texans, kind of figured it out a bit last week. Had a good performance against Miami, but we know they've been kind of hit or miss throughout the season. I feel like you're going to get a B plus effort from the Chiefs, but that'll be good enough. I think they take it by a touchdown.
Yeah, they kind of got screwed with the schedule, right? Because you played on Sunday, then you're playing on Saturday, then you're playing on Wednesday, then you're playing on Sunday again. Like
Yeah.
they're playing 3 games in 10 days. They've gotten screwed. So that part is unfortunate for them. I think even limited, I haven't seen anything out of the Texans offense that shows me they're going to be able to even score 20 points. It's so difficult for them to do. I mean, look how much they struggled against Miami. I'm taking in a close one as it's been all season. I'm taking the Chiefs in this one. I think they're going to be able to control the game. Mahomes will make a couple special plays. And honestly, even if Mahomes went out in this game and Carson Wentz came in, I still think they could win the game. The only thing to alert here, Bry, is the Texans, one of the top 3 sack teams in the league. I believe they're number 2. So that is something to keep in mind with this Chiefs offensive line that has played bad, and you have a hobbled Mahomes. That is something to watch for. That could the Texans upset via their pass rush, but I'm still going to take the Chiefs in this one. The other Saturday game is the 4:30 game, Steelers Ravens. Massive game, determines basically who's going to win this division. Last time the Steelers in kind of a knuckle, down, drag out, kind of street fight going on as all these games are. Won 18-16. Lamar, one of his worst games of the year. He just does not play well against the Steelers, which is obviously a massive problem. They're hosting the Steelers. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these matchups are so often close. So, like, I see right now the Ravens a 6.5 point favorite. I would take Pittsburgh to cover that number. In the end, I think the Ravens will find a way to win the game. I'm going to give you an X factor, and it goes side offense and defense. I feel like Justin Tucker is going to be a big key in this game. We know he's
He needs to
missed a
show
lot
up.
of kicks. He needs to show up, especially in a game like this where
Yeah.
Boswell always seems to be busy in these kind of games. He
Mm-hmm.
certainly was in the last meeting, and so they need to have the best version of Tucker. I
Yeah.
feel like it's going to come down to the kicking game. I mean, Lamar, like you said, has been limited a lot of times by the Steelers' defense. It's a big factor for Pittsburgh offensively. Pickens already ruled out. We know how big of a presence he is on that offense. Had a big game when they met the first time around, so that takes a big weapon away for Russell Wilson. I feel like the Steelers will be gritty and gutty and play it within a field goal, but in the end, I feel like Lamar is going to make that play that he needs to, for his legacy's sake, to get his team a win, and it's certainly important that he does.
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens as well. Pickens, as you said, out. I think it will be a close game. Remember, Tucker missed, I think, 2 kicks in the last time that they played. It might have been 3. I think it was definitely 2 that they missed in the
Oh,
Steelers. I don't know if he'll redeem himself, but I think Lamar has to play better. I think the number is way too high in terms of covering it. But I think the Ravens
right.
have to pull this out, have to get this even records wise for both these teams, and have a shot at winning this division. This is a big, big game for Lamar this season, given the Ravens. The Sunday games kick off with the 1 o'clock window. The Giants and the Falcons with, as we talked about earlier, Michael Penix starting at quarterback. I'm taking the Falcons. There's just no conceivable way at any point I could really pick the Giants. It looks like they've quit. We will see what happens if they clean house or not at the end of the season, but give me the Falcons and the rookie.
I believe it is on track to being a Drew Lock start for the Giants. So if we just recap how their quarterback situation's gone, Daniel Jones to Tommy DeVito to Drew Lock, back to Tommy DeVito, back to Drew Lock.
And
Oh
Tim
my
Boyle in there. Don't
goodness.
forget him. He was also in there.
Boyle made right. He made a cameo in the game last week against the Ravens. Yeah, I mean they're a pitiful team that frankly looks like it's trying to lose. So I think their fan base would erupt in
Yeah.
disappointment if
Yeah.
they somehow did pull out a win. I'm not comfortable with the Falcons with the points just because of the
No.
Penix factor. You don't know how well he's going to play, but as far as who's going to win, you got to take Atlanta. They're at home. They need the game for playoff position. So yeah, that's where we're going.
Cardinals Panthers in a game that's big for the Cardinals here. Can the Panthers play upset in Carolina? I don't think so. I picked against them last week. I think Carolina's just, you know, they've been spunky. I'll give them that, but Arizona's weird. I understand that. I totally get it. But they're just the more physical and talented team. They are playing for a playoff spot in a division thing here. Didn't like Kyler Murray's kind of comments today where they told him about the temperature of the game and he said, oh shit. That's not really a good response you should have when he said he was comfortable playing in the cold weather and then that was kind of his response to what it was going to be. I think it's going to be around those kind of like high 20s, low 30s. Not what you want to hear from your quarterback, seeming like he's worried playing in an outdoor cold game. That being said, run the ball with James Conner and Trey Benson. Give me the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Arizona as well, and don't forget, like in the passing game, if it does click, tight end Trey McBride has had himself a heck of a year, and I think he's on track to do something like have the most
No
receiving
touchdowns.
yards without a receiving touchdown. Now he did have one rushing touchdown,
Yeah.
no receiving touchdown, so that's been kind of an oddity. I mean, he's had a great season.
Yeah.
He's gonna have over 1,000 yards. I'm gonna say bold prediction. He gets in the end zone this week. I
There you
think
go.
Arizona's gonna have a good day throwing the ball against a Panthers defense that is not good at all. I think Arizona wins.
Lions go to the Bears. Lions, we talked about them being the Walking Dead. Bottom line is, I know these teams play close. It might be close again because it's a divisional thing. The Bears are an absolute free fall right now. I think they've lost 8 in a row since the failed Mary that happened over there in Washington. Lions bounce back. They get a win here.
Yeah, they have not gotten any kind of a spark since the coaching change. I mean, the interim clearly looks like he's in over his head.
And I
It's
like
it's a
Thomas
dead
Brown too.
team. Yeah, but yeah, the Lions, as banked up as they are, as we talked about the defensive issues and not having Montgomery, it won't shouldn't matter in a game like this. If it does, then you're like, whoa, there's really some issues
Oh
there.
yeah.
But I would expect them to handle the Bears.
The Titans go to the Colts in a game where the Colts, believe it or not, mathematically are still playoffs alive going on right now. That loss last week really sunk their chances there as they threw away that game against Denver. They're playing Tennessee. I know Tennessee could kind of play spoiler. I've gone back and forth in this game because these two quarterbacks are just not good. They're just really not good.
Yeah.
But at this point, I can't trust anything that happens in Tennessee. Begrudgingly, give me Indianapolis to maybe win 13-10.
Yeah, it'll probably be that kind of a game. I think I'm gonna go Tennessee. You know, the Colts have just really I don't know that I'd say been a disappointment. I thought they could be a decent team this year. Richardson, though, just has not played well.
Yeah.
He's too mistake prone, and normally they can rely on a solid running game, but lately that's been kind of dried up with Jonathan Taylor, not producing at the level that you've come to expect. So, a divisional game can give you some unpredictable results. I'm going to say Tennessee pulls it out by a field goal.
And Taylor with also the huge mistake last week, dropping the ball before the goal line,
Yeah.
basically changed that entire game around and led to them losing. My Rams go to East Rutherford. They're going to play the Jets at
Oh,
1
here we
o'clock
go.
in a game that is A, supposed to be freezing, which West Coast teams, and B, playing a 1 o'clock game cross country. Brian, I'll throw this over to you first. I'm actually legitimately nervous. The Rams do not play the Jets in recent years well. Remember the Jets 4 years ago? No wins. Got their first win against the Rams. Really hurt them in their chances, and they ended up ultimately losing the division that year in 2020. Who you got in this one in East Rutherford?
Well, I mean, I would like to say that I'm picking the Jets to win for a second game in a row, and I didn't even pick them last week. I picked Jacksonville, and early on that
It
looked
did.
decent. I mean,
It did.
Jacksonville was actually leading, but I mean, yeah, I can see where you would have your reservations about the Rams, but I'm not confident in the Jets whatsoever. I mean, I don't think it'll be a blowout by any
No.
means. I could definitely see it being a close kind of games. Could be like on the low scoring side, 16-13,
Yep.
something like that. But I do think the Rams in the end will pull it out. I would expect like Cooper Kupp to be more involved. Like, how did he go last week without catching a single
I know.
pass? My fantasy team wants to know. Maybe you could weigh in on that. But yeah, I think in the end the Rams will pull it out in a close one.
Yeah, first time since 2019, Cooper Cup did not have a reception. I'm picking the Rams as well. I could see this game being about 23-20. I am. If I was picking upset alert, I would pick it here. I'm very nervous about this game. It just feels like it's a big recipe. The Rams riding high, a few wins in a row here, swept the division opponent, beat Buffalo. This is a trap game of a trap game right here. You have to win this game to be taken seriously, to keep pace here over the Cardinals and the Seahawks. You cannot lose here. I think this is a potential scary game, but give me the Rams. The Eagles go to the Commanders. And Brian, the Commanders think they'll make the playoffs. Had a scare game in a game they had no business, had to hold out a 2-point conversion at the end against the woeful Saints, but they get their ninth win. A win is a win. That being said, Brian, they're playing the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles are just clicking on all cylinders. It doesn't matter what drama is going on in the locker room that we talked last week. This team just wins and wins and wins. Give me Philly.
Yeah, well, look, if you're going with your picks or my picks, I think people should be more inclined to go with yours because you've been on a roll this season. I mean, you have crushed
Not
me
tonight.
in the picks, and I feel like I'm leaning more towards some upsets throughout the season. And this one, maybe I'm going to be wrong. I'm going to take a shot with Washington. I feel like the Eagles are due for a letdown game, divisional matchup here. I know last week the game kind of got away from the Commanders. They had to pull it out late, but I feel like at home you're going to see a good game from Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin has had an
He's
outstanding
great.
season. I feel like has kind of flown under the radar. Two more touchdowns last week. A guy who I've always appreciated as a player, and I think this has been his best season yet. I think a close game for sure, but I just feel like the Eagles at some point they're due for -1. I think it comes this week.
The final 1 o'clock game is the Browns at the Bengals, and the Bengals as well, believe it or not, mathematically alive for the playoffs, even though it is a long shot. Joe Burrow does not typically play well against Cleveland, but Cleveland making the change. No Jameis Winston this week. They're changing it over to Dorian Thompson Robinson. He will be DTR will be starting this game. I'm taking the Bengals. I think they're going to win this one. It'll be a close, ugly AFC North Division win, but I think the Bengals will pull it out.
Yeah, I think so too. The Browns, I mean, Winston's just made too many mistakes turnover wise, which that's kind of been the undoing in his career. And Cincinnati, I mean, we've well documented their offense is terrific. It's prolific.
Yeah,
Defense, not good, but I mean, they're playing well right now. Chase Brown too has started to
he's been
emerge
good.
as a weapon for that offense. And Chase is just having an all-world season. I
Yeah.
mean, the guy has been phenomenal. I think Cincinnati obviously rides their offense to a win here.
The 405 games kick off. The only 405 game, the Vikings and the Seahawks. A big matchup here. Will Geno play? Will he not play right now? Kind of questionable, kind of limited right now. That is a huge factor in my decision. With that, plus kind of the way Seattle is trending in a tough game and in a matchup against Brian Flores' defense, I think the Vikings, they can show you, and they've showed you they can play any type of game. Ugly, offensive, defensive, whatever it is. I think they go into Seattle, and for the second consecutive week, a team goes up there and gets a win from the NFC North. Give me the Vikings.
Yeah, I'm taking the Vikings too. It sounds like Geno Smith has a good chance to play. I think I saw that he
He
practiced
said
in
he
full.
feels
They
better.
also are going to
Yeah.
They also are slated to get Kenneth Walker back in the backfield. Not that the running game has suffered much because Zach Charbonnet has been kind of a
Yeah.
revelation. But yeah, I mean, I've been impressed with the Vikings after a downturn there with Darnold around midseason. He's turned it up and playing
Yeah.
outstanding football with an array of weapons. We've talked about how Addison has really emerged. Obviously, you got Jefferson, Hawkinson. I mean, they're really a dangerous team, both sides of the ball. I think they'll pick up another win
And
here.
they can sniff now the division. They're right there tied with Detroit. They can, and they still have to play them. They can feel it. This is a huge game for them. The 425 games kick off with the Patriots at the Bills. I don't really need to talk about this. The Bills are going to win easily. Give me the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, they're a two-touchdown favorite, and frankly, I think they're going to cover that easily.
Yeah. The Jags and the other 425 game continuing play the Raiders. Two teams competing for who slots
What a
in.
game this is.
Yeah, who slots into what draft pick here? Honestly, I've gone back and forth on who the hell is going to win this game. I mean, you got Mac Jones potentially versus Desmond Ritter. I mean, what are we
Yeah.
doing? I mean, what is happening? Can we declare before the game to just both teams say we only run the ball, so we don't have like we just run the ball and play defense and see who wins? I guess I'm gonna pick. I don't know. I guess I'll pick the Jags. I think they have more weaponry. I think the Raiders are really playing for that number one pick in Shador Sanders. Yeah, I guess give me the Jags.
What's your score prediction for this one?
Holy crap, Riot! I swear to God, I would not be surprised if this game is 9-6. I really wouldn't be. I mean, we just watched the Raiders play 15-9. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
these are two terrible teams. They're terrible.
I was thinking 10-9 was the number I had in mind, and I'm with you. I'm taking Jacksonville. I mean, obviously neither team is good, but
No.
like you said, a little better weaponry. You got Brian Robinson out there for Jacksonville.
Oh,
He's
Brian Thomas. Yeah,
a
he's
solid.
been good.
Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that'll be the difference there. The Raiders, there's really nothing to offer. I mean, Brock Bowers obviously
Yeah.
very good, but yeah, it's pretty weak.
They want that number one pick. The final 425 game is the Niners at the Dolphins. Again, two teams mathematically alive, but on the outside looking in. You're down in Miami. Dolphins usually play well in there. The Niners looks like they're going to be without another running back this week in Isaiah Garendo. Doesn't look like Isaac is going to play. Isaac is going to play in this game. I don't even know, honestly, who's their fifth running back at this point. They're beat up everywhere. They have some talented players, sure, but I think Miami wins this game in a bounce back in Miami. Kind of starts the track field going there with Waddle and Hill, and I think officially puts the nail in the coffin to the Niners. Give me the Dolphins.
I mean, Dan, at the fifth or sixth running back, you might want to start getting loose for that position. I know back in our wiffle ball days, you joked how you thought you could be a pitcher in the Mets bullpen
Yeah.
back in those years. So, yeah, I'm with you though. I'm gonna take Miami at home. The Niners, I feel like they now realize it's a lost season. I just
Yeah.
don't think there's much left there. They're very beat up. Nothing really seems to be clicking there. I feel like Miami at home with Tua, the weapons he has, they get a win here, but two disappointing teams, really.
Yeah, and it wouldn't shock me if the Niners win because I do believe they have the better head coach. I mean, Mike McDaniel's going to play his former mentor. But I just think right now Miami's just a touch better in this one. If this game's in San Francisco, I'd probably pick San Francisco. The Sunday night game is the Bucks and the Cowboys, which, is not really that interesting. I know the Cowboys have made it a little interesting lately. It's still Cooper Rush. It's still the Cowboys. I think the Bucks right now playing on all cylinders. Everybody comes into Jerry World and AT&T Stadium and plays well. Give me Tampa, who is trying to win this division.
Yeah, the Cowboys at home this year have been awful. What is it, 1-6,
Yeah.
something like that? I
Yeah.
mean, they have just been dreadful. And you got to give them somewhat of credit. Like
Yep.
Cooper Rush has played decently well. They played hard. A lot of talk about Mike McCarthy's future, and maybe he does come back. So I do give him credit for kind of staying afloat. But the Bucks, like you've said, they've been impressive.
Yes.
Baker Mayfield, kind of an under the radar MVP candidate. Like he'll get some votes, for third place or whatever. Mike Evans being back has helped that offense. Had a huge game last week. Bucky Irving running the ball. A lot to like about that Bucks team, who are proving, that last season was not a fluke. I think they get another win here.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's in the same boat as Aaron Rodgers, believe it or not, where you're kind of playing when the season doesn't matter well, and you'll probably keep your job. The final game, Bry, is the Monday night game, Saints Packers. Honestly, don't need to talk about this one that much. Give me Green Bay. What are we doing in New Orleans at the quarterback position? Come on now.
Yeah. Derek
Jake
Carr
Hayner?
remains out.
Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the quarterbacks that are out there,
Oh, it's
it
just
makes you
terrible.
wonder. It makes you wonder. You got a Packers team that's hot right now. Jordan Love is really playing well lately. Yeah, I think the Packers win this one convincingly and makes for a not very interesting Monday night affair.
Yeah, and also have an outside chance still of winning NFC North. Like they are still playing for that, even though it would
Yeah.
be very difficult. So I think this game means a lot to them. But guys, that is going to do it here for First and 10, week number 16. Let us know all your thoughts down below, your picks, all that stuff. Brian, you're what, 1-0 this week? I'm 0-1 to start off in our picks this season with the Chargers and Denver results. If you didn't catch that earlier, Chargers won that one 34-27 on Thursday Night Football. Getting weird with the schedules here. Some Saturday games this week, and then we'll get into our Sunday games, and then next week it's even weirder because you have the Monday game, then we have a Wednesday game, then we have Saturday games and Sunday games and Thursday games. It's all over the place, pretty much packed with
Yeah.
football. So keep on your picks and your fantasy football leagues would be my advice there. Happy holidays. We'll have one more show probably before Christmas. And like the video, subscribe channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.